These were the opening moves of Olexandr Bortnyk with the white pieces and Magnus Carlsen with black. Magnus is the world number one at Blitz and Rapid, but Bortnyk's over 3,000 on Chess.com. Very serious player. What a game this is. These are the most common moves. I'm drawing on the board here. Bortnyk doesn't do any of them. He carries on with Bishop E2. What is that? A mouse slip? Who knows? Because this is online chess, by the way. It's Titillating Tuesday, late edition, 18th of June 2024. The elite players in the world, clock times on the left. This is exciting, and Magnus just going his own way. First he gets his knight out here, doing a whinny as he goes, as the top guys like to do with their horses. Now we see d3, this bishop crying right now, and Magnus says fine, I'll take the centre, very principled. Now we see f4, a kind of delayed Grand Prix attack, and now the top moves for black. I'm drawing on the board here. Okay, maybe not a bomb cloud, that's not the most ideal, but Magnus doesn't do any of them. He now plays the second pony into the game, again neighing away, but this is just goading white forward. We see e5 on the board. What's the big idea? You're getting driven off. Well, here Magnus shows it. He undevelops the knight back to the starting square. This guy is rewriting chess. How can you possibly get away with this against the top players in the world? Well, watch this. We get knight f3, and Magnus now develops his sniper with a whoosh, bringing it all the way out to pressure this knight here. We get bishop e3 developing, the two clergymen stacked. Burger King would be proud, and don't go pawn d4. Weaken these light squares. e6 instead, the order of the day. Knight b to d2 played, and h5. All part of this system. We ought to call it the Magnus Carlsen system. He loves this sort of stuff. You're going to see what I mean. Bishop f2, coming back here. Bortnyk's seen this dance before, and now after this move of knight to h6, Magnus carries on his ride of the Valkyrie here. Watch where that one's headed. c3 covers d4, and it gallops forth into the game. Hits the almighty f5 square. Wagner would be proud, and after castles, Magnus now cementos everything with the light squared pawn structure. He loves these kind of positions. Uncastled black king. What a game we now get. h3 played, questioning the bishop. Of course it captures. We see knight recaptures and h4, all part of the mighty system, clamping on the dark squares, securing this knight, and after queen d2 developing, connecting the cannons, Magnus carrying on also. We see white going for the wrong plan here. Where on the board should you play? Well, where your pieces are strongest, or where you've got the potential to make them strongest. These are all the top moves of the engine, but Bortnyk, so impressed by Magnus's pony, goes for a ride of his own. Dad ashamed, what are you doing back here? Well, after king f8, Magnus going walkies, we see Bortnyk's point. He forays into g4, looking at the dark squares. Magnus now covers, and the bishop stacks up on f3 once more. Look at the laser beams of those ones. And Magnus, what does he do in response? Weakens this long diagonal further. But the bishop blunted right now. Magnus has gained space. Bortnyk takes a tin opener to that pawn, but before he can capture, Magnus pushes forth, the computer calling for c4 here, the most explosive move, but looks suicidal to give up d4 to the knights. The engine says you get enough pressure here, but okay, that's some ninja stuff. Bortnyk instead carries on his attacking idea. He's so aggressive. He plays the knight forward into f6 there, but it is giving a pawn. Question mark it must get. Rook c8 now from Magnus. Did the rook belong on b8 where the file's about to open? Who knows? The Global Chess Committee currently debating it. They like to discuss top chess topical subjects. These are the guys who organise the candidates, things like that. Very elite crew. And now after queen e2, we get a move which is difficult to explain. Possibly getting out of dodge before knight a5 to b3 comes. We'll never know. It's a mystery. And after Magnus captures on c3, Pawn recaptures, we now see a liquidation on f6. The pawn recaptures with check. There's an intruder at the gates. Dad screams, but don't worry. Mum to the rescue. This is the modern world for you. Beats out that intruder and laser beam on the c3 pawn. So Bortnyk covers. That rook crying, miserable. Rooks belong on open or half open files. And what does Magnus now do? He clarifies the structure in the center. d4 for the score. This one's aimed at giving these knights some squares if he can achieve it, and the top engine move by miles here in all three of the lines is to do something about one of those pesky ponies. The position's closed, they're hopping, so in all lines the engine wants to chop the knight. Well done if that one came to you. Instead we see c4. Question this move we must, would say Yoda, because now knight b4 comes, and what a stalwart of a beast that is. Here we see a5 just to stop a5, stopping that one getting cemented in on b4, but Magnus decides to now play with this second pony. And there's an amazing line here. Top move of the engine, knight to e3. And if you capture once and then twice, this is the critical line to explore. There's an awesome tactic here. Again, I'll give you a couple seconds if you want to look. The move to play is knight c2. You go to Forktown, and if rook captures, queen takes here. Really lovely stuff. But okay, missed. This is blitz chess. We see knight g3 instead, opening the queen's attack on f4, hitting the white queen. You can take, top move of the engine. Bortnyk was nervous to give up his bishops, dark squared grip for Magnus, so he goes queen d2. And after knight h5 back, f4 is collapsing unless you take off this one. This is what was now played. Rook recaptures and rook e1. Good move, looking for activity. So this one comes to the b file. The global chess committee purring away, giving some barks of excitement. Very good move. And after rook a b1, Bortnyk says, not so fast, sirree. I'm challenging the file. Magnus comes back, completes the great circle of life, but Bortnyk immediately breaks the chain. Fleetwood Mac not happy. The c5 pawn hit, and now Chess.com are trolling us, I tell ya, because that one's attacked. How should it be defended? Queen e7 selected, and this one gets an exclam from the engine. How do you explain that? No clue. Apparently it was the only move, so maybe that's why it's a great one. But now Bortnyk, maybe it was so great because it induces an error on his part. He plays the move of rook g5. Something steadier was in order, like queen d1 to f3. But he comes here, perhaps looking for f5, trying to open up the king. The queen x-ray defends the rook, but after Magnus goes f6 here, the trio of dragons chasing out the cannon, supported by the mother behind, will hear this rook is getting a bit offside. And f5, top move by miles. You let the rook come back, but then it's kind of stranded, marooned on a desert island. But Magnus doesn't see it. He goes knight c6, both players getting low on time, opens up the tension between the rooks, but Bortnyk slides away. Great rook, great move. Pressuring this pawn here. f5 now again the best move to play for black, but Magnus completely misses it. He now makes an error of his own and goes queen to f7. Gets the double question mark. Blunder, because white's completely equalised now. It's fully game on. You can either play rook takes on h4 as the top move, or queen e2, also good, targeting e6. Rook he8 to cover is the best move, but Magnus now rotates his knight around. Bortnyk got a juicy choice. Do you take on e6? Do you take on h4 with the rook? Both moves very good, but he plays a move which looks natural but is wrong. He plays bishop takes on h4, not taking the opportunity to get rid of his isolated rook. Magnus now allowed to hit f5, double hit on the bishop, it retreats here, he's losing time, and rook he8, the backwards pawn covered, this rook stranded. Magnus now in the driver's seat. Queen f3 played, opening that rook. We get queen b7. Of course Magnus wants to swap the ladies, loves himself an endgame, so Bortnyk dodges it. Good move. Queen c6, micro improvement, opening the rook. also protecting this pawn. Now h4 played, and this is where it gets pure scrambly. They're under 10 seconds. King f7 sidesteps the pin, and Bortnyk just goes for it. Doesn't have to do so, not the best move, but they're flinging things. Very low time, they get 1 second back per move. Magnus now takes, and Bortnyk goes for this crazy exchange sacrifice. Not accepted. If you go for it, this is Bortnyk's point. Whoops, not takes there, checks here, and this is the idea. If you block like this, then you still pick up the knight. White has equalized, and if instead of blocking you play the best move, king g7, well then black is still winning, but okay, not easy to see this line. The rooks come, black's doing great. So that was technically the way to go, taking, not worrying about the check. But Magnus didn't want to risk it. He brings the rook and covers. Now we see rook h2. Why not a capture of the pawn? Well, this is a problem. The second rook comes. You're threatening this checkmate. And how do you actually cover it and hold on to this rook? The lines just don't work out. Feel free to click around. Instead, we see rook h2 covering the mating square, but now h4. Where's Aretha Franklin when we need her to say a little prayer for Bortnyk? Look at the pieces now, the whole army on its way, mate threatened, rook e4 enabled because the queen moved out the way, intercepting the bullet, but now rook g6. Magnus going for the double stack. He stacks the 2 towers, big pressure, king h1 played, and now knight d6 hitting the rook. But Bortnyk finds a great move, flinging in this pawn f5. This is why he's a great blitz player. You take my rook, I take you with check. So Magnus comes back with the knight. He's 2 pawns to the good, but now this one drops. Not the best move. You can technically take with the knight, but Magnus misses it. He plays queen b7, looking for an invasion, and that's why the bishop slides all the way back. Opens the rook to check. Magnus covers it. Rook h8. Invasion, but leaving g2. Not a good move. Magnus can simply crash through immediately. He goes knight d6, however. Hits the rook once more. It saves itself. Offers a queen trade. Magnus plays it. And these rooks come flying through into the game. The king exposed. Naked as the day it was born. Bortnyk goes for pressure on f6, but check. King here. You can check a second time, but first Magnus brings the knight, covers his king, bishop f2 back, rook hit, spotted. He's the world number 1, is Magnus Carlsen. King h3 played, and now a liquidation tactic. Swapping rook for rook here, Magnus emerges, 2 pawns to the good, and the more powerful minor piece. But it's still game on, with king f1 coming around to the pawns. Rook b8, both players now activate their rooks. This one comes to e2, rook a1 behind that one, and now we get check. The knight covering so a7 doesn't drop. Bishop e1 covers a5. What a game this is. Check from the rook. Bishop d2. That king now pinned, or the bishop pinned to the king I should say. And so after e5, rook h8, knight e6. That's why we see the king move out the way. The knight's coming to f4. That is deadly. So this is why the king steps back. King g6 played, and now rook a8 targets a7. It's gonna drop, so Magnus goes for play with knight f4, and you can't allow d3 to drop. These pawns just become an absolute avalanche, way more dangerous than the a pawn. So that's why we see bishop takes, pawn recaptures. Now the a7 pawn drops. f3 is marching, barrier about to be formed, so the king has to step over. Magnus marches in, rook a6 targeting this one. How are you going to make progress? Well, this is great chess. Magnus says, do your worst, Alexander. I'm stepping in. Yes, we see takes with check, but look at the activity of the black monarch. Mate in 1, threatened. That's why we see check. King takes on d3. Now we get the march of the a pawn, but black in the driver's seat. The pawn's being mopped up. Rook f6 coming behind the passer, and after king c3, Magnus allows another pawn to drop with check because he achieves d3. Rook f6 covers the a-pawn, check, king f2, d2, and resigns from Olexandr Bortnyk on move 77. Because if you go rook d6 to stop the queen, well, you make the queen anyway. Recapture with the rook, then come back, mop up the a-pawn. Great game from these two titans of Title Tuesday. Finest blitz chess going on here. Hope you enjoyed. And for another epic game, check out the video on screen, and I hope to see you again soon. Cheers.